Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I'm Rabbi Jenny Greenspan here for Congregation Beth-El. And this week I am doing my Torah Talk actually pre-recorded, so I'm not joining you live today on July 10th for Shabbat morning, but I've actually pre-recorded this so that you can still have a Torah Talk with me while on vacation. So I apologize for not greeting each of you individually as you comment, but you should still say hello and Shabbat Shalom to one another and know that I am thinking of you and saying Shabbat Shalom to each and every one of you as well. And I am so grateful for the technology that allows us to keep going on these journeys and have our Torah even from a distance from one another. So I'll say Shabbat Shalom and welcome. As usual, if you would like a PDF of this morning's Torah portion from the Etz Chaim Chumash, you can go to beaz613.org and go to the virtual Shabbat morning resources where you will find a PDF of the Etz Chaim Chumash for the double portion, Ma'atot Ma'aseh. And if you are following along in a standard Chumash, you may grab it now, or a physical copy of your Etz Chaim Chumash, I should say. You may grab it now. I will be focusing on the second of our two Torah portions this morning, but you can take a look at both of them from that PDF or from your own Chumash. If you are following along in a different Chumash from an Etz Chaim, you'll go to the beginning of Torah portion Maseh, the final Torah portion of the book of Numbers. Before I dive into it, a little bit of a summary of the two. So these are the final two Torah portions of the book of Numbers. So later on at services today, you should hear a chazak, chazak, v'nid chazek, a strength and strength. You shall be strengthened. This time, for the first time, we've gotten to do it in person since closing the book of Genesis in 2019, 2020. So I'm really excited that you will get to do that together today for those who join our services in person today. And you'll get to close the book of Numbers with Cantor Melissa. Which will be a very special moment to get to close together. But these two Torah portions are the last two of the book of Numbers. So the book of Numbers as a whole has largely recounted our ancestors' journey out of Egypt and the various stories that have happened to them, but as they are heading toward their promised land. In the first of these two Torah portions, we see them standing on the precipice. We see two of the tribes, Gad and Reuven, asking to, rather than cross over into the land, stay in the side of the river, on the other side of the river Jordan, claiming that it has better herding ground. It's an interesting thing to explore. Moses gets quite angry with them, so the commentaries on that are also interesting to explore on what is it to be a part of the community and what is it to separate oneself from the community. How much influence do we exercise over one another? So that's a big theme in Parashat Matot. We also see the importance of vows, and if we say that we are going to do something, we are in fact beholden by the Torah to actually do it. Those are some of the themes of Parshat Matot. And then we come to Ma'aseh, the true final portion of the book of Numbers, which is where I would like us to focus a little bit today. So if you are following along in an Etz Chaim Chumash, I'm on page 954, whether you're following in the physical copy or the PDF. And if you are using a different Chumash, you'll just go to Numbers chapter 33, the very beginning of the final portion of the book of Numbers, Parshat Maaseh. We say, these were the marches of the Israelites. The marches, or the Maaseh, the travels of the Israelites, who started out from the land of Egypt, troop by troop, in the charge of Moses and Aaron. Moses recorded the starting points of their various marches as directed by God. Their marches, by starting points, were as follows. So the first one, we'll get a little bit of a story, and then we'll see a theme begin very quickly. I'm on verse 3. They set out from Ramesses in the first month, on the 15th day of the first month, and it was on the morrow of the Passover offering that the Israelites started out defiantly in plain view of all of the Egyptians. The Egyptians, meanwhile, were burying those among them whom God had struck down, every firstborn, whereby God had executed judgment on their gods. So in this first journey, we see the actual review of the actual painful moment for the Egyptians and the somewhat defiant, as the word here is used, movement of the Israelites. And then we see the rest of this journey they have been on. So verse 5, chapter 9, or page 955. The Israelites set out from Ramesses and encamped at Succoth. They set out from Succoth and encamped at Etham, which is on the edge of the wilderness. They set out from Etham and turned about toward Hahiroth, which faces Baal Zephon, and encamped before Migdol. They set out from Penei Ha'arioth and passed through the sea into the wilderness. They made it a 3 days' journey from the wilderness of Etham and camped in Mar'ah. They set out from Mar'ah and came to Elim. There were 12 springs in Elim, 70 palm trees, so they camped there. They set out from Elim and encamped in the Sea of Reeds. They set out from the Sea of Reeds and encamped in the wilderness of Sin. They set out from the wilderness of Sin and encamped in Dofka. They set out from Dofka and encamped in Alush. They set out from Alush and encamped in Rephidim, and so forth. So we see a little bit of detail, but not very much of the detail of what's happening in each of these places. But we see each of the places that they went. They set out from place A and encamped in place B. From place B, they set out and they encamped in place C. And so forth for the entire journey is what's the rest of this chapter will flow. And it seems kind of an odd thing to do. It would seem as a reader who didn't experience these journeys, it can almost seem sort of boring to us. I don't know how many other Star Trek fans might be joining me, but if I were to hear the opening of the Star Trek Next Generation opening credits, where we hear the final frontier, these are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise, its continuing mission to explore strange new worlds, seek out new life, new civilization, and boldly go where no one has gone before. If I heard that phrase and then just heard they went from this place to this place, this place to this place, and just got a list of the episodes, it would not have been the successful and long-running TV series that it was, because it would seem to have gotten quite boring. So the question is, why? If we go back to verse 2 of this chapter, Moses recorded the starting points of their various marches as directed by God. Why did God want this review, this just list of all of the places that they went, rather than giving much more than geographical information in this list? This would frankly be, as Rabbi Jeff Salkin put it, this would frankly be if you were to pull the GPS history up on your car or your Google Maps history and just read through the addresses of where you have gone before, but not say anything about what you did while you were there. It could seem quite boring. So why do we have this list of places? Sforno, so it was an Italian rabbi, Rabbi Ovadia Beni Yaakov Sforno, lived in Italy in the 1600s, suggested that God wanted these there and in somewhat simple text as a compliment to the people who didn't ask what they should find at each place, that they just indeed followed God's expectation and God's cloud that led Moses and Aaron to help lead the people around, and that they, as Sforno put it, it was a reward for their faith, that they would deserve to enter and inherit the land of Israel. It was a compliment to them for the people who had followed God blindly through the desert. That the simple list with nothing more is actually to emphasize that the faith that the Israelites showed that they were willing to faithfully follow God, regardless of whether or not to expect anything interesting or any adventure there. My problem with Sforno's comment, of course, is that a running theme in the book of Numbers is the people complaining to Moses about something, and usually about a lack of food or a lack of water. And why did we have to go on these journeys, and couldn't we have just stayed in Egypt where while we were enslaved we knew what was going on? So to me, there's something beautiful to what Sforno is suggesting, but it feels incomplete. Or Chaim, who lived just a little bit later, Rabbi Chaim ben Moshe, whose commentary is called Or Chaim, he lived in Morocco in the early 1700s. He said that we want to explore, rather than that they had the faith to just go, we should emphasize the journeys. The fact is, each of these verses does not really focus on the place. The repeated theme, the word that we hear over and over, or the Leitfort, as biblical scholars want to point out, the constantly heard word, is ma'aseh, is travel. They moved from one place to the next place, and one place to the next place. And it's the emphasis on the journey, not what happened in each place, but that they were on a journey, that they were moving. Orach Chaim, as do actually several of the commentators, recalls a midrash offered in Bamidbar Rabbah in one of the earlier midrashic texts about the book of Numbers. Says that looking at these stages is comparable to a king who had a son who was ill. And this king needed to take his child on a journey to find an expert who could heal him. And when they returned home with the son healed, and the king wanted to share about their journey, he did not say where they were and what happened while they were there. He instead recounted all of the stages. First we went here and we slept. Then we went there and we cooled off. Then we went there and he had a headache. And then we went there and he was healed. That each stage is as much a part of the journey, even without every detail. Each stage is a part of the overall journey of hoping to achieve that opportunity to receive the promised land. And similarly, says the Midrash, the Holy Blessing One said to Moses, recount to them all of the places where they had gone. And therefore it started out, these are their stages. These are their journeys. These are the places that they went. So on the one hand, at first it reads like a list of Star Trek episodes without watching it, or it reads like the list of the addresses in your GPS history. But in fact, it's a reminder of all of the steps that it takes as we go on the journeys and adventure of life. It's not about only the final destination. It's not they left Egypt, they wandered for 40 years, and they arrived in the land. They left Egypt and first went to Ramesses. And they went from Ramesses to Succoth, and from Succoth to Itham, and so forth. Each step, however big or small, was important, that each step helped them to arrive where they are today. This year we are indeed on one of those similar journeys. We are on a journey out of what was a very, very difficult year of 2020, of COVID quarantine and lockdown. In each month of 2021, we have seen more and more expansion of vaccination availability, starting in January through April. Each month, more and more of us able to access the opportunity to protect ourselves from this virus. And now, as many of us have been able to achieve that vaccination, we're starting our slow journeys back to opportunities to be in person. And this portion becomes a reminder of all of the stages that it is, what it is to go through stages, what it is to recognize that each step of the journey is important, and that the main important word as we do it is vayisu, and they traveled, and they moved, and they journeyed, that all of our lives are a constant step of stages, not only the end of our ends, but everything that it takes in us to get there. So this week, as we think through our next steps, as we enjoy our time of slowly returning together in person here at Beth-El, I hope that we also take the moment to review, even in a brief summary form, what this journey has been for us, so that when we come back together, as we come back together, we continue to have the opportunity to feel the blessing of being together and to celebrate with one another. So say Shabbat Shalom. I look forward to seeing you next week, both on video, live again, and in person in the synagogue in the morning. I am looking forward to both of those things, and I hope we take an opportunity in this moment of pause in the summer to reflect on the journey we have had, so that we can truly appreciate the ends we have received. Shabbat Shalom, and I look forward to seeing you very soon.